Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 video. So we're diving back into the patch notes again today for part 2 of 3 of our deep dive into the update notes for the fishing update for Fallout 76. And yeah, as I mentioned yesterday, the patch notes are extensive and detailed. So rather than being really dry, really long videos that get sort of bury you in an avalanche of information, we're breaking this down into more manageable chunks. So yesterday we looked at the new fishing mechanics as well as the bug fixes in this particular patch, and today we're going to take a look at the perk card changes, of which there are a decent number, though not quite as many as there have been in previous updates, so that's a relief. And tomorrow we're going to take a look at the weapon and combat changes in more nuanced ways to do with legendary changes and weapon adjustments and things like that. So yeah, just the perk cards today. It's worth noting, as I said yesterday, but again, this is going to be the last really humongous change like this, for at least a while anyway. They're expecting to have subsequent, obviously smaller changes, more focused ones, or more generalised stuff possibly, but in terms of having absolute stacks of information like this that require massive changes to your build every single time, this should be the last time for a while anyway. They've done this major set of overhauls. I think this is like the third major patch like this. So yeah, slowing down the pace on that I think is welcome. Anyway, we can jump in, take a look at these perk changes. So, we're removing perk card requirements from crafting. Since you already need to have learned the plan, we feel that requiring you to change your perk loadout to craft is cumbersome. There's a couple of key points here that are relevant. Requiring is the important word. There are still perks that give you benefits to your crafting, so Super Duper is still a thing, for example. There's a Chemist that allows you to produce double chems when crafting, things like that, Ammo Smith, so that they basically buff the amount of whatever it is you're crafting you can produce in a certain number of clicks and for a certain number of materials. So those things are still a thing. So if you have a crafting loadout like I do, especially if it doubles up as a camp building loadout, then you might want to tweak it and adjust it a little bit. However, you probably won't want to get rid of it. So bear that in mind. But a couple of details are in here that is quite helpful. So these are a bit more generalized in some ways, a bit odd with the organization here, but bear with. Ghoul perks are no longer able to be picked when you are leveling up as a human. That makes sense. That was always supposed to be the way, but was not quite working the way it was meant to. Conversely, human-specific perks are no longer available to be picked when you are leveling up as a ghoul. So there's certain ones that just won't affect you as a ghoul, and vice versa as a human. And yeah, those should be removed from selection now, which is helpful. When leveling up, perk cards will now be sorted alphabetically in all languages. You can also still change the sorting whichever way you like. So hopefully when you're scrolling through, it'll make it easy to find what you're looking for. A bit more logical anyway. They've updated loading screen tips for perks and added a help entry for the kill streak perk detail. So there are the adrenaline perk, I think, is the one that has a kill streak based on it, and so there's some nuance to how that works, but basically you get a damage increase over the course of a kill streak. This is where we're interesting on the crafting side of things. Fireproof is no longer required to make the flamethrower trap. To be honest, outside of its specific base function, the flamethrower trap is no longer required either. Previously, it was one of our main building glitches. Use the flamethrower to break stuff so that you can bypass collision and stuff to a certain extent. Now you don't need to do that. You can whack it with a weapon, use the Wrecking Ball perk, and not faff around with a flamethrower. So, yeah. You can use a flamethrower trap as a trap, but even then, it's not as useful as a turret, so they're relatively redundant now. And home defense. You no longer need home defense active in order to craft workshop traps, or some of the more advanced ones, which is cool. So it makes turrets and things like that easier to craft. Conversely, the home defense perk means your turrets will be more effective when you're at your camp, but you don't actually need it anymore. So both of those perks, well, that perk is now moderately redundant, I think. Anyway, moving on, we've got a whole bunch of perks that have been renamed, and some of these will kind of reappear further down the list because they also have had their attributes changed, which is why they're being renamed. So Science is now becoming Science with an exclamation point. Science Expert is becoming Pyrotechnical because it now affects fire damage. Science Master is becoming Cryologist because it's now affecting cold damage. So I've got that on my one-handed melee build because my plasma cutter is using cryo damage. Rifleman is becoming Downranger, Rifleman Expert is becoming Scoped Up, and Rifleman Master is becoming Smart Shot because they have completely reworked effects. They're completely different now. Commando is becoming Center Masochist because it's a Center Mass thing. Commando Expert is becoming Fast Fighter, and Commando Master is becoming Number Cruncher because, again, they've been completely reworked. Shotgunner is becoming Easy Target. Shotgunner Expert is now Love the Spread because it tightens up your accuracy. And Shotgun Master is now Shotgun Champ. Okay, so yeah, again, the effects completely changed. So, we've got some perk balancing stuff, and this is just all of the actual changes, really, isn't it? Not quite sure why it's labelled that way, but strap in, let's get ready. Armourer has been reduced to a single rank, so this one affects the quality of the armour you produce. Powersmith does the same thing for power armour, also being reduced to a single rank instead of 3, so for those loadouts, you will have a bit more space in your intelligence tree. Again, you'll probably still want these for crafting, but it just makes your crafting more effective. Slow Metabolizer has been tweaked. It is now a 2-rank perk. On all food, satisfies hunger by an additional 50% and 100% at rank 2. So yeah, fewer ranks, more impact of each individual rank, if you happen to be having that perk. Dromedary works exactly the same way, but for water and quenching your thirst. Hydrofix, now chems will restore thirst at rank 1, and they restore twice as much at rank 2. Munchie Resistance, same thing for hunger. They restore hunger and restore twice as much at rank 2. Chem Fiend. Any chems you take last 100% longer. The point cost has been increased from 1 to 2, and ranks 2 and 3 have been removed, so it is now a single rank perk with a cost of 2, but it is considerably more effective. Travel Agent. This one's getting a complete overhaul. Previously, it just reduced the fast travel cost. Now, that fast travel cost has been reduced across the board anyway, irrespective of whether you have this perk equipped. It has been reduced by 25%, so that's nice. But this perk will no longer affect that. Instead, it will allow you to fast travel while over encumbered, albeit at an increased cost. For some people, potentially useful, especially if you haven't got Fallout First. But if you have got Fallout First, stick a survival tent down and then you don't have to travel while over encumbered at all. You know, relatively easy to do. So, yeah, mixed blessing there, I think. But I'm definitely happy about the reduced fast travel cost in general. That's definitely nice to have. It's always been a bit galling to pay to fast travel. Dodgy. This one, I have feelings about this one. Rank 1. Evade now costs action points and no longer has a cooldown. It gives you a 5% chance to evade. Just as a base starting point, I think, there. Point cost has been increased from 1 to 2, because it's a single rank card now, as ranks 2 and 3 have been removed. And the dev note here, it says, the action point cost is 10 times the cooldown time. Cooldown time scales with damage avoided, meaning the higher damage attacks cost more action points to avoid. If you would not have enough action points to pay for the evade, it cannot occur. So, yeah, essentially, it'll use a single rank at a cost of 2 points, and the more damage you are trying to evade using Dodgy, the more action points it will cost, and if you don't have the action points to pay for it, it just won't trigger. So, yeah, essentially, this is kind of a nerf to the perk, I think. Before, it just gave you a chance to avoid at a cost of action points. Now, it's going to eat up more action points, I think. You'll run out of action points faster with it, and it will just be less effective. That's the impression I get. I might be off base on that, but yeah, I think overall Dodgy's just gotten considerably less useful. There are other perks, on the other hand, especially if you're a ghoul, that are more useful. So, yeah, Dodgy has just been bumped down the priority list quite some way, I think. So, Adrenaline, we mentioned this earlier. This is getting a big change. It now only has a single rank instead of up to 5 or 6 ranks or whatever the heck it was. It was, I think, the card the most ranks previously, or most potential ranks. At rank 1, you will gain 10% damage for 30 seconds per kill, and the duration refreshes with kills. So that's different to what it says on the actual cards. It talks about kill streak on the actual perk card in game. So I think this is probably phrased differently for clarity's sake. So you gain 10% damage per kill for 30 seconds, and the duration refreshes each time you get a kill. So, yeah, this will basically give you... I assume there is an upper limit to it, but it's not marked here. I'm guessing the in-game help thing that talks about the kill streak will give you more details on that. But yeah, basically, it's 10% every extra damage each time you kill. So, If you're going ham, then potentially with a lot of enemies, you could end up having really quite high damage output. Which, good if you're soloing things like expeditions and the like. I think it'll be useful there. But yeah, I assume it does cap out at some point. They just haven't told us here. It's probably buried in the help section in-game. So, science has been changed, so it is now a single rank card again, and it will increase the energy damage you do based on your intelligence. So, yeah, whereas before it was just allowing you to craft certain weapons, energy weapons primarily, they have changed it so you no longer require perk cards in order to craft them because you've learned the plan. That's enough, basically. I see where they're going with that. On the other hand, it kind of removes just because you've got the paperwork doesn't necessarily mean you have the skill to apply the information, you know? Just because you know something needs soldering doesn't mean you're any good with a soldering iron. That was the kind of the original logic, I think, behind it, but they decided to video game it a bit more, which I kind of get. I'm not entirely sure I'm in favour. It's another step towards making everything easier and just kind of handing everything to the player rather than making you work for your achievements. And I'm not entirely in favour of that, but anyway, this is not the worst example of it, I don't think. Moving on, before I get into a rant. Pyrotechnical. This used to be Science Expert. Now it is again a single rank card that will buff your fire damage based on your intelligence. And Cryologist used to be Science Master, and again, single rank card that buffs your cryo damage based on your intelligence. Makeshift Warrior is being reduced from a 5 rank card to a 3 rank card, and will change the rate at which your melee weapons break, reducing it obviously as you have more ranks. Useful if you're a melee player. Bear in mind, this doesn't affect tool-type weapons, so not chainsaws, not auto-axes. You need the stable tools perk for that one, so make sure you're using the right one. It's an easy thing to overlook if you're not aware. Gunsmith, again, being reduced from a 5-rank card to a 3-rank card, and I think 50% slower. I'm not sure if that's a nerf to the card. I think it might be. I think it was originally at 80% slower, and now it only goes as high as 50. So your guns will be breaking faster going forward. However, somewhere else in here, there is a reduction in the rate at which weapons break overall anyway, I believe. We'll get to that in tomorrow's video on the combat changes, but it's in there somewhere. So I think they kind of offset each other a bit, so it's not as much of a nerf as that would appear. As to whether or not it is one at all, I'm guessing it probably is, but at least not as much as it seems. White Knight had its ranks changed last time round. This time round, they're moving it out of the agility tree into intelligence, which makes sense. It's where all of the your stuff doesn't break as fast perks are. Anyway, this one was an outlier by being in agility, and it makes your regular armor not break as fast. Not your power armor, your conventional armor. Downranger. This used to be the Rifleman perk, which was originally a single-shot rifles perk. Now, you'll do increased damage to enemies at distance with ranged weapons, 10%, 15%, and 20% depending on the rank. So yeah, basically, it says ranged damage to far enemies. What on earth does far mean? That's what I want to know. The threshold at which this kicks in is not mentioned anywhere that I've seen. It may be buried in the help section again, but still, I haven't seen anything about that. And also, it's not like the game exactly has a grid on the ground or any way of judging distance except just kind of plain luck and eyeball it. And perspective in Fallout is weird anyway, so that doesn't help either. So this is yeah, okay, there's a point at which you can go, okay, yeah, that probably is far away, but where the line is unhelpfully vague here. Scoped Up used to be Rifleman Expert. It is now a single rank card that your scoped weapons have 50% more range when aiming. So presumably this includes weapons with like a reflex sight on as well, but it just gives them a little bit more range, which is definitely not a bad thing, I don't think. And I'm guessing this will also apply to shotguns. If you have a reflex sight on your shotgun, you can give it a little bit of a range boost, which would certainly be nice. Assuming, of course, you have the slots available, the perk card slots available, enough points under perception, I believe, in this case. Open-ended question there. Smart Shot used to be Rifleman Master. Now it's a single rank card wherein you will deal 25% weak spot damage when using a scoped weapon and aiming. So yeah, it's a couple of these perks are leaning into free aiming, which is my way of doing things, as opposed to using VATs. I did have a complaint in previous updates that those of us who don't use VATs and aim manually were being left behind and not benefiting from a number of the changes. And in fact, we're ending up getting an effective nerf as a result. This is bringing that up into line with everything else and catching up. So a little bit better there. I mean, I'm not actually using that kind of weapon at the moment, but I might switch back eventually, you know. I do like to mix up my build from time to time. Still, it's good to see the non-VATS user getting a little bit of love in the game. I do appreciate that. Sniper. Gain improved control and hold your breath 75% longer while aiming with scopes, and it's a single rank card now instead of a 3-rank card, which used to peak out at double, I think. It was also never a primary choice. It's never been a big pick. Holding your breath longer, yeah, the basic level is enough. For most players, I think. If you have a little bit of difficulty with your movement and precision and stuff, maybe if you're using a controller or something like that, it might be a bit more useful, but especially if you're using a mouse, yeah, you didn't need it. Long shot. Scope weapons have more range and accuracy when aiming. Yep, okay, that kind of adds up with the scoped up thing, though, which is interesting. So, yeah, those two, will they stack? It's a single rank card. I guess they probably will stack, and you can make your weapon even more long range, which is, yeah, again, if you've got the space and you're a shotgunner, possibly particularly worthwhile. But good for everybody, I suspect, who uses a ranged weapon. Center Masochist. So this one used to be the Commando, the auto rifle perks, and they have been changed. You now do 25, 50, or 75% bonus damage when targeting a creature's torso. Assuming it has a torso, I assume. I assume it adapts to whatever the center mass thing is, varying on the type of creature, but I think most of them have something that would count as a torso, don't they? Fast Fighter used to be Commando Expert. It's now a single rank card, much like the previous set of perks, and your movement speed bonus also applied to your reload speed, so reload faster. Potentially nice, but probably not a first top-tier pick, primary choice. Yeah, I think there are other things that are probably a bigger priority. Nice to have if you've got a spare perk point, though, or 2 in this case, because it costs 2. I think the perk point cost might be a little high there. It depends how fast that reload gets, I suppose. Number Cruncher used to be Commando Master, single rank perk now instead, and weapon damage is increased by AP cost. So, that's interesting. That probably means the more single shot orientated weapons get a bigger buff to their damage. Everything will get a buff to its damage if you equip this perk, but more for lower fire rate, higher per shot damage weapons, because they tend to have the highest AP cost per shot. So, we're getting there now. Ground Pounder. Rank 1, your small guns reload faster and have better hipfire accuracy, and that's 10% at rank 1, 20% at rank 2, and 30% at rank 3. So, faster reload speed and hipfire accuracy. Again, a low tier perk overall, I think. Skeet Shooter. Small guns have improved accuracy and spread, so pistols and rifles and the like will be basically more accurate, and it's a single rank card. It doesn't say that it's a 2 point cost on this one, so I don't know off the top of my head. It might just be a 1 point cost. That'd be nice. But yeah, essentially the way accuracy works with an accuracy stat is if you picture a 3-dimensional cone coming out of the end of your weapon, your bullet can end up anywhere in that cone, which is why you can have your crosshair right in the middle of a creature and have the bullet still go flying past them, because the gun's just not accurate. Basically, this will just reduce the size of that cone, keeping the shots into a tighter area. Helpful. Yeah, definitely not one of my favourite mechanics, but a nice change here to have, a nice potential perk. Easy Target used to be Shotgunner. It is a 3-rank perk that increases your range damage to crippled targets. So you'll have to cripple them first for this to kick in, but if you really want to lean into the crippling side of things, this one might be worth picking. Not least of all because there are a lot of changes that we'll go over in tomorrow's video to how crippling damage works and how limb damage works, so hopefully this will be something that is triggered more often if you do want to go down that road, because certainly previously it was none too reliable. We'll see how this particular setup works. I've had my frustrations with that as recently as last week prior to the update, so we'll see. Love the Spread. It used to be Shotgunner Expert. Weapons that fire 3 or more projectiles gain 30% range, and it's now a single rank card that costs 2 perk points. So, yeah, basically shotguns primarily get a range boost. Yeah, makes sense. Shotgun Champ used to be Shotgunner Master. It is a single rank card, much like some of the ones above, and has perk point cost has been increased from 1 to 3. That's different, worth noting, so this one's going to be expensive. Each projectile your weapon fires increases your damage against crippled targets by 10%. Okay, so shotguns usually fire, I believe, 8 projectiles, so each projectile will be an 80% damage buff against crippled enemies. So if you want to go shotgun and crippling, potentially very effective if you can get a cripple off quick enough. It's also still possible, and I suspect probable, that most creatures will die before you manage to cripple them, so it might be academic. We'll see whether or not they've pulled that off. My one concern is if they have pulled it off and creatures cripple faster than they die, that makes sense, but it might also just bullet sponge things even more than they already do, which is my fear. I don't know if that is how this has panned out, but I'm concerned that it might do. Scattershot is a single rank card and costs 2 perk points. And 20% of damage dealt to a limb is applied to all limbs on a target. So, yeah, if you hit them in an arm or leg, then all of them will take a little bit of damage, and that one will take the full amount, I suppose. If you want to cripple more than one limb, potentially useful. I think there was a perk somewhere back here that increases damage based on number of crippled limbs. Did I see somewhere? Okay, so if it's the case that more crippled limbs will result in increases to damage, and this might be useful. If it just cripples more limbs faster without any additional benefits beyond that, I don't think this will be a particularly helpful perk. I think it might be quite a low tier one looking at that, as it doesn't actually seem to have a secondary effect that sort of cashes in on the effect. As far as I can tell, I'll have to keep an eye out when we dive through the details tomorrow, but yeah, I'll get a feeling Scattershot is not going to be a top tier choice, I'm thinking there. So, Moving Target is an agility perk that's had some adjustments, only applies when you're not in power armor, and you get a 5 or 10 or 15% chance to evade damage while sprinting, depending on the rank. Not quite sure how that is a change, not sure if it's a buff or a nerf, or... Yep, don't know how that changes to the original one, but yeah, that is the new stats on it anyway, so... It is what it is. You may want to review your agility perks in particular, agility and intelligence based on this, but also your perception perks as well. They're all got quite a few changes in them, so you're probably going to need to move that around. Goat Legs is now a single rank perk card that means you take no falling damage. Actually quite handy. If it's only a single point cost as well, then not having to worry about falling damage would be a nice convenient thing on the agility tree. But very much one to pick if you have a spare point rather than a primary one, I think, in my view. So we're jumping on to, for some reason, a legendary perk randomly here. Blood Sacrifice. Rank 1. Using action points in VATS now consumes HP instead at 150% more cost. So 1.5 health points instead of 1 action point, I suppose. And as you rank that up, it reduces the cost to a point where it might be 50% less. Yeah, interesting. Not a primary choice, I think, for most people, Blood Sacrifice. I don't think it's a particularly popular card, probably why it's getting changed. But still, it's one to consider now. And our final one is Nerd Rage, which has been reduced to a single rank and now costs 2 points at rank 1. They've removed the damage resistance effect, so now... while your health is low, you just gain increased damage and action point regen. So, less ranks, so it costs less, and you can put more perks in there. But it doesn't make you as durable. So, the glass cannon effect of bloodied builds will be even more amplified by a reduction in their damage resistance. Which, given that some of the other changes in here, particularly there's a change down here, off the bottom here, which increases the damage output of bloodied builds, kind of goes some way to offset that, I suppose. But yeah, I'm still not convinced that's a good change. Yeah, all in all, this is definitely a net gain to player power. I mean, as we'll see tomorrow, most of this does constitute a damage output increase. Most of the weapon changes that we're going to look at tomorrow are buffs as well. So, yeah, they've done a bunch of nerfs and now they're doing a bunch of buffs to kind of get things where they want them. But you combine that together with the fact that a lot of perks are having their number of ranks reduced and their cost effectively reduced, maybe not by the full amount, but by at least a bit. It means you can equip more perks as well, so you've got more player power creep. And as I've been ranting about for months at this point and complaining about, this once again is just making players more powerful in a game that's already too easy. So, yeah. Bethesda are into this whole power fantasy thing, but yeah, I find that kind of lowbrow personally. I don't think it's particularly interesting or impressive or, a good way of approaching things. Satisfaction from overcoming a challenge is far more interesting to me than having stuff handed on a plate. But that's just my feeling on this whole overall shift. Nonetheless, there's a whole lot of changes to a lot of perks, bringing a lot of stuff in there. Some of these are really complete overhauls of perks, so yeah, lots to keep an eye on. But I hope you guys found that useful and informative. If you did, please consider dropping subs and likes. I very much appreciate. Hit that notification bell, and then you'll be notified when I upload a new video or go live and stuff. Well, maybe when I go live. It's a bit hit and miss on that one. And yeah, we have another video coming tomorrow on the rest of the combat changes, which will be fairly extensive and detailed as well. So keep it here for that one. Down below the video as well, we've got social media links and channel memberships if you want to support the channel that way. I really, really appreciate it. And as I mentioned, if you do want to join us for live streams, we are, of course, going to play some Fallout 76. We are playing Atomfall, and that's been really, really cool. And we are checking out Oblivion Remastered, having a lot of good fun with that one. And even Tainted Grail as well at the moment, which I'm really enjoying too. So lots of stuff to watch if you are interested to join us for that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.